Good morning. I've been having a little bit of trouble getting the video to start today. Hopefully it's all going to work. It's Facebook is acting a little funny for me today. Don't know about you, but I think we're here now. Good to see you. Happy day 10. Happy Thursday, and it's day 10 of our 14-day ReThink Weight Loss Challenge. And I've been so inspired about you making time to really improve your thinking and change your psychology to support your healthy eating and weight loss. It's been really touching to me to see. Good morning, Barb. Love to see you here. I'm Dr. Ginny, and I love to help people learn to eat, think, and live slender so they can really reclaim great health and vitality. It's a wonderful thing. This week, we've worked on changing the I deserve this mindset from I deserve this treat that's going to be over in a minute and give me a stomachache, possibly, to I deserve a rich, happy, full life. I deserve health and vitality. I deserve to be able to go out there and take a hike when I want to go take a hike. At least that's part of the picture for me. We've also worked on strengthening our emotional intelligence so we can make healthy eating a happy habit. And we've worked on reducing the conflict between the two sides of ourselves, the two sides of our brain, parts of ourselves that are often in conflict over what we're going to eat, so that we can really give the part that is more concerned with our happiness, the part that's more thoughtful and thinks about what's happened to us in the past when we've done this and what we really want for the future. We can really of a chance to play in the decision making. It can, instead of your impulsive desire side winning all the time, you get to make your life work better for your highest intentions. And that's really what this challenge is about. It's not like we go from having a crummy mindset to having a great mindset, but we can really shift it in that direction kind of steadily. And that makes a massive difference in our lives for things like being able to eat healthy and release excess weight, and all kinds of other things in our lives too, our relationships and our ability to get through challenges and lots of things, our work, our finances, all those things. So I wondered if you took a little time to talk with your gremlin yesterday and what you learned from your gremlin and what your gremlin learned from you. I think it can be helpful to be a little bit lighthearted about all this stuff. We can get awfully hard on ourselves when we violate our, intentions when it comes to healthy eating. And that's not helpful. That doesn't really help us eat healthier. So getting a little bit lighthearted about it can help. And sitting down to talk with your gremlin doesn't have to be a really painful experience. It can really lighten things up for both of you. I picture the gremlin being like this little child that I've been saying no to all the time. Stop it. Quit asking for stuff, And the gremlin's like, you never want me to play. You never want me to have fun. So we sit down and have a real conversation face to face, sort of, right, in your head. It's just a really different feeling. And the gremlin doesn't feel like it has to fight me so much. If that makes any sense, I'd love to hear your feedback about that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the stories that we tell ourselves and how we make meaning out of what happens and how that can be for the good or for the ill for us. Let's see here. So we're always looking to make sense out of things, to make meaning. And there's a couple of things that we try to make meaning about, like what's causing what? Sorry, my little note system's falling down here. Okay, so we make meanings about causality. So have you ever eaten something and you got a stomach ache after, and there might have been 40 ingredients in that thing, but you decide one of those ingredients is what made you sick, and you're not going to eat that ingredient anymore. And you could be right. It could be some information from your gut that's telling you, that was a problem for us, but it could very well be wrong. If it's not very scientific to say, out of the 40 things in there, I'm pretty sure it was this one that gave me the stomach ache. The other thing is the stomach ache a problem, or is it, actually something that's happening inside your body that's really good, that you're just getting a little sensation that you haven't had before. So we tend to kind of decide, oh, this caused that. And very often when we do that, we're wrong, because it's a correlation. It doesn't prove that there was causation there. So we make causal meanings that aren't lots of times really true. Another thing that we make meaning about is why we do things. And I talked earlier this week about the interpreter function in the left hemisphere of our brain, and it makes up plausible explanations for why we do things. So we ask ourselves, or someone asks us, why did you do that? That seems out of character for you, or, that's not what you said you were going to do. And so we'll look for an answer to that. And we'll just, if we can find an answer that could fit, we'll just say that's the answer. It's been proven over and over. You can kind of recreate this in an experimental condition, that side of the brain just makes up plausible explanations. And then we do a quick test that's like, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. That's the truth. So we are really good confabulators. That side of the brain will come up with an explanation that seems to make sense, but it may not be even close to the truth. So it might not be accurate at all. We also will look for meaning about why other people do things. And so you'll hear somebody say, I saw my friend in the store the other day and she didn't really stop and talk to me and she's mad at me. I don't even know why, but I think it's this thing that happened, blah, blah, blah. And you can start making up a whole story that's plausible, but might not have any relation to what's true. And that story can really lead you into trouble with that friend, right? And you get really convinced of that story. And then at some point you confront her and you say, you're mad at me because of this. And she's like, what are you talking about? And then you feel like, well, she's just not owning up to her stuff and she's not being willing to be honest. And, the research shows we are really pretty bad at judging why people do things. And we tend to be too harsh in our assessments of why people do things and too easy on ourselves sometimes. Like we had a really good explanation for why we did this out of character thing or this thing that we probably shouldn't have done. But other people, it's because they're lazy or it's because they don't care, things like that. We should really be careful about making assumptions about why other people do things because we don't understand their motivations lots of times. We don't even understand their perspective. It looked to us like they did this thing out of this context, but for them, the context was completely different, right? I remember a story about a woman who was in a parking lot at the mall, and she went into this space. No, she was coming out of the space, and this guy was coming in and was beeping, beeping, beeping at her. And she was like, geez, I'm going as fast as I can. Stayed kind of frustrated and angry and took that irritation home. Like, gosh, people just don't have any patience. And but then she realized, I don't have my coffee cup. Where did my coffee cup go today? And she realized she had put it on top of the car when she had gotten in. And then that's where it disappeared. And then she realized that's probably why that guy was beeping at me, to point out that my coffee cup was on top. But because she assumed it was impatience and it was irritation and it was kind of aggression, it kind of ruined her day. And she carried that irritation and upset into other situations during the day. So we really aren't good at judging why other people do things. And these stories we make up about why things are happening are often not true and not helpful. So we also generally are trying to explain to ourselves, when an event happens, what does it mean for us? What does it mean we need to learn? We need to understand what's happening so we can better judge the effect it might have on our lives, right? So this automatic meaning making evolved for really good reasons. If we saw giant paw prints in the snow, it meant saber-toothed tigers were nearby and we really needed to be careful, and we need to not think about this a lot. We just need to, react to take care of ourselves. It was better safe than sorry. But now this jumping to conclusions, things can be really holding us back in life, and it's helpful to realize what's happening because we can develop a really strong sense of certainty about these beliefs. And that's partly because we're really good at finding proof to prove our beliefs are true. It's really easy. You end up in political disagreements with people and they fully 100% believe X and you fully 100% believe Y. And these are not compatible ideas, or at least not the way that you're stating them. So how is it that people become completely convinced of completely different things? It's because our brains are really good at finding evidence to prove what we already believe. So at some level, it's really natural to do this meaning making. It's really necessary, but the stories we come up with aren't really necessarily true. And when it comes to eating, these can develop into limiting beliefs like healthy food doesn't taste good. I ate a salad yesterday and it wasn't good. It was really boring. It was not a happy thing for my mouth at all. So healthy food doesn't taste good. Or here's one I think a lot of us develop. Nothing's good to eat anyway. You can easily end up feeling this way when you look at the news and all the information that comes out about what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. It's partly because of the 24-hour news cycle, and people are constantly looking for novelty. So somebody's constantly telling you, here's news. This food that you thought was good for you is terrible for you. And this food that you thought was bad for you is really good for you. And so it's really understandable that most consumers are ending up feeling like, I don't know, I can't sit and study this like it's my doctorate. I just have to eat every day. And it seems like there's just no truth here. It seems like the truth is constantly moving, so we don't know. I was just looking for the statistic. I think it's more than 50% of Americans say it's easier to understand my taxes than it is to understand what to eat. And so there's nothing is good for us to eat anyway. It's not actually possible to eat healthy is a limiting belief that's really easy for us to believe, to hold on to and say, and that will cause us to say, let's just keep the status quo. Let's just eat whatever we're eating, whatever we feel like eating. Let's not worry about it because apparently there's no truth here. So, if we come up with these stories, but we don't really believe them, it's one thing. But if we really start developing a conviction about them, then they kind of are controlling us and we're in trouble. So, we have an experience or two and we just make up a plausible story to explain what it meant. So, we quickly check it against a question like, let's see, does that make sense? And we go, yeah, that makes sense. That could explain it. So that's the truth then, right? So it's easy to find evidence for what you believe is already true and to develop that into a really strong conviction that doesn't serve you, but to hold on to it for dear life. Like, I really believe this belief. It's my belief and it's really true because I've proven it to myself over and over and over. So, so these beliefs are a feeling of certainty about what something means. But really, because I hope I'm showing you that much of that certainty stands on a house of cards. There's just not a lot of there. So let's take an example, a non-eating related example where you call a friend. I called a friend earlier this week, and you sort of expect a friend to call back maybe within a day, either the same day or the next day, but she didn't. So by the second day I called her and I said, you don't love me anymore. I was kidding, but excuse me. But we can quickly go to that kind of story, like my friend's mad at me or she doesn't like me anymore. And we do this very easily, right? And if you let that go through the filter of, does it make sense? Yeah, that could explain why she would behave that way. Okay, it's truth. You're creating a whole new problem between you and your friend, right? So what are some ways to prevent this automatic process of meaning making in a situation that could be destructive to that relationship? Well, question it is one thing I've been teaching this week, right? Just question your belief. Just don't buy it and hold on to it and decide it's true and search for evidence because you'll find it. And it might not be helpful to you. It might be disempowering. So just question it. You could ask yourself, what are some other possible explanations for what just happened for my friend not calling me back in a couple of days? Here's an even more effective question. What are 3 other possible meanings for what just happened? So I already said one could be that she is mad at me or doesn't like me anymore. What are 3 other possible explanations? I like that question because it sends you searching for 3 explanations. It assumes there's at least 3 other explanations. If you said to yourself, what are 10 other? You'd have to make a little time for it. But you could find 10 other explanations, right? So that would really help. Or just asking her, when you talk to her again, I just wondered why you didn't call me back for a couple of days. Is everything okay? Just open that door for whatever her explanation is. Now remember, when you ask somebody why they did something or didn't do something, they're going to come up with a story. It may not be true. They may think it's true. They'll come up with a plausible explanation. Anyway, it doesn't have to become a problem in your friendship lots of times, right? So you can search for an understanding that's more true and more constructive. That's one of the things we've been working on. So what about stories we make up about healthy eating and weight loss that hold us back? So given our environment and our experiences, and including the experiences we've had trying to release excess weight in recent years, it's easy to end up with certain stories, convictions, certain limiting beliefs that can hold us back. So one we talked about last week, healthy eating is too hard, or healthy food doesn't taste good. We talked about these limiting beliefs last week. Another one is, for some reason, my body just won't release the excess weight. There's something about me. I think it's my genetics because everyone in my family's heavy, or I think it's this condition that I have. I think it's my age. I think my body just won't do it. And we know how that kind of story, that kind of belief can really defeat our healthy eating and weight loss efforts. It's just too easy to eat. We eat by habit. Making a change in how you eat takes a little bit of effort and attention. And if you believe and you hold on to this belief and you look for evidence proving that your body just won't do it, you're not going to be able to stick with the healthy eating. You're going to do what's sort of the most convenient and the most habitual. So that's one of those stories we can end up with. Or I just suck at willpower. I just don't have the willpower to say no to myself. I've observed this. I've seen it over and over. I just don't do it well. That's another story that can really defeat our weight loss. It's too big. It's too generalized. It's not true. So if you asked yourself, what are 3 examples of willpower I've used in the last week? What are 3 examples of willpower I've used today? You can find those. There are answers. So it's not true and it's not constructive. It's very disempowering to say I don't have willpower. So it's very helpful to change that one to willpower is an exhaustible resource, and sometimes my willpower is exhausted. But I have been successful using my willpower to change things I want to change many times in my life. If you're someone who's gotten a master's degree or a doctoral degree or a bachelor's degree, who's finished technical school, all these different things, you've had willpower. You've just gotten up and gone, to school. You've gotten up and gone to work every day. There's willpower all the time that we're using. And then there's that idea that nothing's good for us to eat anyway. It's not possible to eat healthy. There's a lot of confusing information and truly terrible advice out there. So it's no wonder that you would develop this story. I had a couple of beliefs about eating that turned out to be really wrong, but I held them with great conviction. When I was younger, I had the belief that all I need to do is exercise. It's not about eating for me, it's about exercise. And this is back when I really didn't have a problem with weight. It would be my weight might go up, 5 to 10 pounds at the most, not when I was 50 or so pounds overweight. But when I was younger, it seemed like exercising, I would go from being kind of squishy around the middle, having my clothes fit too tight, to changing that when I'd start exercising. The truth about exercise is there's a lot of research about this, and we don't understand all of why this works exactly, but there's a lot of research showing that people who exercise intensively while they're trying to lose weight more slowly, have more difficulties losing weight, and lose less weight. So if we have experimental conditions, the people who are exercising lose less weight. And it's partly because you'd have to exercise so much, more than a person could possibly exercise, to compensate for how much more you're going to eat when you're exercising intensively. Now, the people I work with, I say, go for a 20-minute walk. It's important to have some exercise and some movement in your life. But it's not, when you're trying to release excess weight, when you're on that kind of path, it's not the time to take an exercise routine. It's not going to help you. It's actually going to make things harder. So as I got older, that approach definitely was not working for me. It was not working for me to release the excess weight, but I believed it for years. What works for me is exercise. Here's another one. I used to get dizzy a lot, and I believed that I had low blood sugar. What I believe now is that my blood sugar was going through really big swings. And my belief about the blood sugar was that I need to eat something with protein every 2 to 3 hours just to keep my blood sugar even. What this is really doing is making the blood sugar a lot spike and valley a lot more. So it was a blood sugar issue, but it wasn't the way that I understood it. But I held this belief really strongly. And so for years and years and years, I ate every 2 to 3 hours. And I would start getting dizzy, and it was always a sign to eat. Now, I found out that I have positional dizziness for whatever reason. I have low blood pressure usually too. And so that's part of why I get the positional dizziness. Also, caffeine is a really big predictor for me of dizziness. So I had this whole story about I have to eat every 2 to 3 hours. I'm pretty sure that's a big reason why I continually overate and gained too much weight. And I don't think it helps our metabolism to eat that frequently. And I don't think it helps our digestion. We haven't even fully digested one meal before we're putting more on top of it. So, but I believed it very strongly. It was a really hard thing to change. I just decided, once I studied all this and realized eating on a more predictable schedule, like 3 meals and no snacks, really is effective, and I really tried to do that, that it all changed. I quit getting the dizziness. I have to also manage my caffeine for that. And I quit feeling like I needed to eat every 2 or 3 hours, and I quit getting hungry, I quit getting dizzy. It all just changed. And so I started making room for understanding this differently, and I started learning, okay, it doesn't work the way I thought it worked, and this is making a big difference. This belief was making a big difference for my weight. So you can see we can easily find evidence to support any belief we hold, but if your beliefs aren't empowering you to create the life you want, you can change them. You can ask questions, right? You can search for a different way of understanding it. So I wondered, what stories have you developed about eating and weight loss that hold you back? And it's kind of another way of talking about what we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks. What stories have you developed about eating and weight that hold you back, that keep you eating in a way that doesn't serve you? So that's really helpful to think about and to make some notes about and write down, because the stories we make up are often disempowering to us. And they're really just justifications for maintaining the status quo, because that's what our brain wants to do. They don't support the side of us that wants to fulfill our highest potential in life. So my advice is slow down the meaning making. Be careful what stories you're putting to what's going on, because you're probably not accurate if you're coming up with a story too fast, which is natural for us. It's pretty automatic. So question the meanings that you assign to things. Approach your understandings of the world and what you're learning more like a scientist. So based on the available data, it appears that eating every couple of hours alleviates this sense of dizziness that I get, and that may be important for me, but I'm always open to new information. That will already help. So I took many years studying, how eating and health and weight loss works, and I gained some really helpful understandings, and I learned pieces of this kind of step by step. It took me several years, but I learned the keys and the steps that allowed me to change how I was eating so that I could release the excess weight and regain tremendous health and vitality. And I learned it well enough to be able to teach it to other people and help my clients have the same results. But I still remain open to learning more. This is probably every field we could study is very complex, but eating and health and weight loss, very complex. Like, we've just been learning so much more about gut health and the gut microbiome and how all that plays in to our health and our mood and our weight. And so I'm staying open to always learning more. I've figured out certain steps, but it's all going to keep getting clearer and more accurate if I keep my mind open to what I keep learning. And I keep learning partly because I keep working with clients, and they keep, finding, oh, here's something that particularly worked for me. And I start to see new patterns that fill out the story a bit more. So I invite you to do the same thing. When you find that you have a belief like this, open it up to questions. That will really help you. Maybe get a notebook to start noting your observations and just the facts, ma'am. So for example, I don't know if you know that when you start releasing excess weight, lots of times you'll feel a little bit sick for a while. And that's because our body, when it takes in toxins, like, maybe some of the chemicals and preservatives in our food that the body says that's not food. We're going to hold that in fat just to protect the rest of the body from this thing. When you start releasing that fat, those toxins are also going to come out, and it could feel kind of crummy for a while. After a while, you start to feel great and just so much release of energy, but at first you might be releasing toxins and feeling crummy. I remember I worked with a doctor colleague for a while, and she was just very impressed at my weight loss. She was seeing it week after week, and she was saying, I'd love to know what you're doing. And so she gave me 2 minutes to explain what I was doing, and the next week she came back and 2 minutes. So it was it's really not enough time to explain how this works, because it's a little more complicated than that, a little more rich than that. But she came back the next week and she said, I tried what you're doing and I felt lousy, so I know that's not going to work for me. So this is exactly how we make up stories, right? First of all, she doesn't have all the information. She took, 2 minutes worth of information and decided to try to apply it without any support or any guidance. And changing our eating really takes a little more than that. And also, feeling lousy might have been a good sign, but her story was, okay, I can't do it if I'm going to feel like that. Well, when you start eating differently and you start feeling a little bit lousy, it could be easy to say, this isn't going to work for me. I can't feel like this. Well, you can feel like that for a week or two if it's going to give you tremendous benefit, but you have to understand that that's likely, right? You have to be giving it that chance. You definitely aren't going to eat in a way that makes you feel lousy for the rest of your life. Nobody's going to do that. Anyway, so figuring out, what does this mean? Keep an open mind about it. So if you eat something and you get a stomach ache, maybe note, I ate this and it gave me a stomach ache. And some of my thoughts about what this means are blah, 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 blah. But then some other things it could mean are X and Y and Z, right? That could be just helpful to you in keeping these stories from being to this house of cards that can keep you misinformed and acting on misbeliefs, on limiting beliefs. So let's see here. Where I am with my notes. Sorry, I have some kind of tickle in my nose. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's take a slower, calmer approach to making meaning out of things, and let's question the automatic meanings and stories we make up, especially if they're disempowering. So that could be another thing in your notebook. Is this belief empowering or disempowering to me? Let's assume that the narratives that we're coming up with automatically are at least overgeneralized and maybe completely wrong, maybe false. And let's make ourselves open to new information and new interpretations about what things mean. Does that make sense? Let's see, Barb made a note here in the comments. I have an unempowering default belief that fun involves food, comfort involves food, social life involves food. Well, yeah, these are really, really good points, that our food and our eating are really mixed up with social life. They're mixed up with comfort and a lot of emotions, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And because I know Barb is in the Slender for Good program, we're going to have lots of time to address those thoughts and those beliefs and what we want to do about our social life and our food. Because it takes a little time to talk about this, and we really want to be able to, but the general point is we can go into those situations really focused on the social aspects and the love and the relationships and the communication and conversation and dialogues. And, everybody can be eating. We can be eating differently from how everyone's eating around us, and eating healthy and, setting a good example, but really just taking care of ourselves and just focusing on the relationship. We don't have to be we don't have to be eating the same things exactly to be having a really great time with people. In fact, when we're eating in a way that doesn't make us sick, in a way that really empowers our highest intentions, we can show up in a lot more present with people. It's kind of surprising. You might not see how it's going to work right away, but it works very well. So keep working to make healthy eating a happy habit and strengthening your psychology for healthy weight loss. Remember to use your ReThink Weight Loss workbook. I was just looking to see if I have it right here. Yes, your workbook. Remember to use that. Just listening to me is not going to change your life, but doing this work that I'm recommending in between can really change your mindset, and that can change your life. So I hope to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to lead you on a really powerful visualization. We got just a tiny taste of it last week, but really tomorrow that's what we're going to spend our time doing, is visualizing your healthy eating and weight loss outcomes and your journey to get there. You're taking the action to achieve those outcomes, because that's where we really get the benefit from visualization. It's not just visualizing the outcomes, it's visualizing ourselves taking the action to get there. That makes visualization a really powerful, beneficial tool. So this can be a really transformative experience for you. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day. I love you. See you tomorrow.